Hello to all my goddesses and gods, and welcome to this week's episode of Confessions of a New Age Goddess. As always, I'm the New Age Goddess herself, Melissa. This week, we will be having our next guest and personal friend of mine, Adrienne. So, Adrienne, welcome to the show, and thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been really exciting just getting prepared for this and chatting with you about just our various stories.
Yeah,
So
for
excited to
sure.
talk.
Yeah, cool. All right, so Adrienne, could you tell us a little bit about what you do and just kind of anything you would like to share with the audience?
Sure. My name's Adrienne, and I'm the founder and principal of A Glorious Kaleidoscope. And what I focus on there is primarily sharing my experience and modalities, including Akashic Records, Astrology, and Reiki. So for me, I have been studying the healing arts in a more formal sense for at least 10 or 11 years now. When I was a kid, I was really into a lot of healing arts things as well. But for me, I focus mostly on Reiki, Akashic Records, and Astrology because I find that my clients find those to be really useful tools. And I've been studying Reiki for almost 10 years. I practice in the Usui Reiki tradition. If anyone is a nerd about Reiki modalities, there's so many now.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been practicing that for about almost 10 years. I am a Reiki Master teacher. And Reiki is a form of energy healing. We can chat a little bit more about what Reiki is later. I know you have a specific episode dedicated to that as well, which
Right.
is really great explanation. So I've been practicing the Akashic Records for over 5 years. I studied under Christina Cross, who was the assistant to Linda Howe, who created this particular method of getting into the Akashic Records. And that's been really interesting. It's been really cool how some of my clients will have different guides who can be a little bit snarky or very direct. And with astrology, I think that's one of the modes of healing and understanding the world that has always fascinated me. I've been studying that. I've been nerding out about that since I was a kid, since I was about 10. And I took a more formal approach to studying in 2017. Yeah, so that's a little bit about me. I also am a crystal junkie. I love crystals. I'm really curious about just the way that the our emotions and all of our beings from a physical sense are so impacted by the thoughts that we think and the feelings that we either feel or our different experiences in just a lot of layered ways.
Oh yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. Yeah, no, that was a perfect intro. Feel like the audience has a good idea of who you are. And just to kind of let them know, yeah, we definitely met through astrology class online, of course, as most
Oh
most
yeah,
things are
yeah, it
now.
was virtual. That was so long ago. I've been taking classes with Lynn Ewing. She's awesome. She's got over 3 decades of experience studying astrology. So yeah, I took that Astrology 102 class with you a second time.
Yeah, and we really discovered in the class how many things we had in common. And then
Yeah,
even we're a few years apart, but even our birthdays are so close. And then there
yeah,
was so much about us that was
same.
similar. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because in especially with either not so much what is considered to be personal growth and development, although I think that healing arts is everything that falls within growth and development. I think that we're here to learn and grow. We're like plants. Um, and crystals also are growing, but they have a very different understanding and experience of time because those are living beings also, but we're here to learn and grow in our life experience on earth. So yeah, I forgot where my train of thought was going right there. um
Oh, yeah, just kind of like that. We had some things obviously that are similar about us, that are different about
oh
us,
yeah,
but we
because
could,
we have the
yeah.
same birthday. And
Hmm.
with most spiritual classes or even like healing classes, because I don't even know, I'm constantly studying and learning and growing that way. So because things are always changing and there's more research coming out, especially around the overlap between metaphysics and science and you know healing in so many different ways to approach it. So it's like a kaleidoscope of healing modalities. But usually with these types of classes, what I've noticed in my experience is there tends to be a theme, or people will have a lot of different things in common that they're ready to either receive or release. So in the astrology classes I've taken, I think every single person in that class was a Capricorn.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then you and another person had similar aspects in terms of your ascendant and some other specific things, which is just really cool, because it's like, oh, we're all here for the right reasons at the perfect time. And this is literally showing up when we look at the chart of the class and the charts of everybody in the class.
Yeah, it's kind of like, what are the odds? You know, there's so many different, we all know there's 12 zodiac signs, but to be that close even,
Yeah, and
it
the
was
number of
crazy.
aspects, number of aspects, I think it's almost like, oh, here's kind of data around what I've seen in different experiences that I've had. I know one retreat that I went on with this healer, his name is Brent Baum, and he's part of the Miraval faculty out in Arizona, or at least he developed this method called holographic memory resolution. And I went on a retreat, and everyone had the other participants had similar things to my experiences. And so when each individual went up to get a healing, even though they were like present in the group, everyone was getting something similar that resonated, even if it wasn't obvious and you're not raising your hand. And so to see that, like, with the astrological proof of here's the mathematics behind it, it is an art and a science, was just kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, I mean, this data isn't really lying. You can't really lie with data. So
No.
you can't lie with data, but that's another conversation completely.
Exactly. Yeah, it was just for people who really want the quote unquote proof on paper. That's kind of a good way to give it to someone who's maybe a little bit more skeptical, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And then I think the big cue that probably most people have, and the question I get a lot, is how did you get into the modalities you're trained in? What made you kind of seek them out?
Sure. I think that's a really fun question. And there's kind of two different phases that I think about, which is when I was a kid. And that was so fun because I used to go to bookstores, and my parents are book nerds, and I used to have stacks of books about astrology, because I found out about astrology when I want to say when I was sometime in grade school, and it just really made sense to me about there's different people who have different proclivities or tendencies, and there's different rhythms, right? So astrology is way more complex than just the 10 sun signs. It's really like a 15-sided Rubik's Cube in my understanding of it, because we're studying the way that external bodies impact us from this specific perspective. And I was also really into tarot too. And that kind of faded away when I entered college, although I did tarot for a while, but that kind of like shifted gears. And in 2008, I was chatting with a friend of mine who is a masseuse, and she was telling me about Reiki and how it was energy healing and really relaxing. And I was listening to her, and I thought, all right, girl, I don't know what that is, but you do you. That is amazing. Good for you. I'm glad that you found something that you find really helpful. I had no idea what it was. It was, we talked about so many other things on that phone call. And then about two years later, I was at work, and I just had a really strong thought pop into my head. You should look into Reiki. I was like, I don't know what this is. I'm at the computer. I can use a quick break. Let me look this up. So I looked up Reiki. I found a school that had an informational session about what Reiki was. I went to it, and it included a mini session of Reiki. I got about 20 minutes of Reiki. I had amazing sleep. It was just as if I had gone on a vacation or something like that. I felt so relaxed the next day. And that for me kind of started my journey into Reiki. I felt called to learn it, and I just felt like, okay, this is part of my soul's path and my life journey, is to include like helping other people I immediately knew that I was going to be a Reiki master teacher, which was kind of interesting. And I wasn't ever worried with Reiki about when I was going to get attuned next. I just trusted that it was going to happen when I was ready. So the school that I learned Reiki at was called Equilibrium Energy and Education, founded by Bernadette Duran, who's an amazing healer who knows tons of different modalities and takes a scientifically based approach to her healing practices. So that's where I learned Reiki. I also got curious about the Akashic Records, so I got certified in that, and I practiced a couple other healing modalities, but really for me, it was kind of with Reiki, just kind of getting called in and pulled into that. And then there was a huge journey of different changes. Astrology is something that I've known about for a really, really, really long time. It's been around civilization for thousands of years, for eons, really. And so for me, I think that I was always studying privately with lots and lots of books. I have a pretty substantial library, astro.com, different forums, and some YouTube videos too. I think YouTube's a really fascinating place to find a plethora of different information, and then being able to go and check out kind of more resources outside of that media is always great. I kind of went back into astrology just based off of having a lot of different changes all at once, where I was just like, I don't know what the hell is going on. Tarot is really great for helping navigate certain things, but I think for me, I was just like, I don't know what the hell is going on or why, and can I put like a timestamp on it? Can I understand better? Let me go to an astrologer and talk to somebody. And I also went back and started taking more classes on that around that time too, where it's like, okay, well, I have a knack for this in my chart. I'm curious about this. This is something I've always been looking at and kind of been curious about too. And yeah, so does that answer your question?
Oh my gosh, definitely. Yeah. And I think it's so cool how you kind of explained to us that you started with one thing, and then after you kind of, marinated in that one modality, then it kind of moves you on to another one and another one.
Yeah.
And then, how they kind of even work together. I think
Yeah.
a lot of people, they don't even like realize that you can kind of marry the two together, and then kind of a third thing is created, if you will, as well.
Yeah, it's almost kind of like, it's the day after Thanksgiving. It's like if you're preparing for a dinner party, right? Choosing those recipes that are in your wheelhouse, knowing what flavor pairings go well together. And if you're putting together a meal, it's helpful to have complementary flavors, but that means that it doesn't mean like if you want to have rosemary featured in your mashed potatoes, you're necessarily going to put that seasoning in your sweet potatoes, but there's a way you could do it too, right? So I think, or Brussels sprout, what you get the metaphor. So I think that there is a way to kind of, I've taken my time understanding what it feels like to experience something, and also feel comfortable enough with my experiences and in trying things with friends and family before I share it with others. So that way I really can understand the different possibilities of an impact that some modalities can have, and as much as I can the whys behind it, but also sometimes allowing for, this isn't my experience, but other people have had these experiences too, and being flexible. So again, kind of going back to that Thanksgiving metaphor, based off of, say, if Reiki, astrology, and Akashic Records are the things that I'm happy to share now, it doesn't mean that I don't study other things as well. I study lots of other stuff too. But being able to get to a point of mastery where I feel comfortable enough serving these dishes at this dinner party when I'm engaging and serving other people is pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think also just as a healer, when you do have a client, sometimes they don't even know what they need. They're just like, oh, I just need, maybe spiritual guidance, or I just need some type of healing, but they don't even know what that looks like. And I think it's great that, you have a variety of different modalities to choose from, so you can really, prescribe, if you want to use that word, the correct one for that person.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point, and I hadn't really considered that. I think for me, it's also more so a dialogue of really understanding where the person is coming from. If anyone has looked at a horoscope chart, it's like a wheel, it's a circle, right? And there's 10 planetary bodies. The sun and moon in astrology are considered planetary bodies. They're not planets, obviously, but they do have a significant impact, especially from the perspective of the earth. And when I've looked at different charts, they look like kaleidoscopes to me, because it's like the beads are the planets when you're looking at a chart, and they rearrange themselves. And so that means that everybody's unique and everyone's an individual. And so really having an understanding of what someone's curious about, or if someone's like, oh, I don't know what I need. I'm like, well, what's happening? What's the latest and greatest with you? And let's see where we can find something that's going to be a proper fit for you to try on and explore, so that we can have a better understanding of where you are with your journey and help you move in a way that's really helpful to move you forward in a way where you're allowing movement and it's not all like staccato, right? Like, I mean, jackhammers can be fun to use, but do you really want to travel 3,000 miles just on a jackhammer?
No, no, of course not.
I mean, if that's works for you and that's fun for you, then it's great, right? But if it's going to be tough and difficult and you don't have the right gear for that, then something else, a different approach might be better. Like maybe you want to just be like, take an airplane, or just be able to teleport. I can't guarantee either of those things or anything, right? We're using a metaphor, but I think that sometimes being able to work with other people with where they are, and also do it in a way where you're not forcing somebody down a path, is something I really love about Reiki and these things in general, because they're very, I think that the spiritual arts can be very misunderstood from people who may not necessarily be open to allowing the totality of their being to understand their current situation, or to allow them to kind of just thrive where they are. Because it doesn't mean like wherever you are, you don't necessarily need to move forward or backwards, or there's other ways you can move. Like I'm thinking of a dancer, right? They tend to make use of different levels, so you're not always going to have a ballerina up on their tippy toes, right? Sometimes they're going to jump in the air, sometimes they're going to go down really low. And so I think that that's something that's important to understand too, which I think that like a lot of my clients have shared with me that they have had experiences with Reiki in particular where they were expecting one outcome, and then they're not even worried about having a specific result anymore. It's like, oh wow, I was expecting just to have my leg healed, and it turns out that I had a really great conversation with my grandfather, right? So, and that was cathartic. So it's really fascinating how depending on where somebody is, I try to just see what makes sense from what would be helpful for them where they are. And if they don't know, then it's like, okay, well, what are you curious about? Let me meet you where you are, because I can't tell you what's going to be best for you. Usually people at the core of our beings, we know what's best for us.
Exactly.
But that knowing isn't always just because you know something doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. It doesn't mean that you might know it consciously either.
That's
Right?
very
Like,
true.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it is, to your point about meeting people where they're at, and that everything is not for everybody, because we are so complex as human beings.
Yeah.
And I think also I like the fact that you said some people got a different result than they were expecting to get after a treatment or after a session, because I've noticed that a lot too. People were like, I came because, maybe I want to sleep better, but then I got all of these other benefits that I wasn't even expecting. And I think the people who go in with an open mind, which I feel like most of them usually do, at least the ones I've encountered, they really do yield the best results, because they weren't limiting themselves throughout the experience as well.
Yeah. I think that is a really beautiful point. And what does it mean to have an open mind? sometimes having an open mind doesn't mean, oh, this is going to work, right? It's like, I'm open to the possibilities. I'm open to trying. William Bingston is, Dr. William Bingston, he's a doctor in sociology, and he has a book called The Energy Cure. He's done a lot of research around a healing methodology that he's developed over time that has been scientifically proven to cure cancer in rats. Like, look this up. He's been doing these experiments for at least 20 years. He was saying that, like, I think with open-mindedness, I'm thinking of what he said about being a skeptic, and how a skeptic is not going to necessarily shut something down or being like, I don't know about that. That's not true, right? You say, oh, that can't be true. Show me the proof. It's like, well, having an open mind, maybe I don't know if this is true. Let's see what happens, and let's see what information we can get and see if there's proof. So I think there's a different way to be open than people may think of right now in our current way of speaking about things. I think it tends to be very polarized. And so it's like, it's okay to be in a gray area and not even know what shade of gray it is. Or maybe it's not even a shade of gray, maybe it's a weird green color.
Yeah. Yeah, the possibilities are endless.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's just really important that people also be detached from the outcome.
Exactly. And I think that the detachment and open-mindedness is what kind of we're both speaking to, but it's like having an openness that includes detachment.
Because
Yes.
when you are attached, then it's kind of like, well, I didn't get that one result, so I'm not even noticing all the other things that came up through the experience.
Yeah, and I think with a level of detachment, it also includes, like, with feeling our actual feelings that can tend to shut off immediately. I mean, or like we were just talking about, just the link between emotions and the physical sensations of the body, and that interacts and impacts your mind as well. It's because we all come in one package. We're not separate. We're not separate. That's why your dental health can impact the health of your foot. It might not do it directly, but it's not like your mouth is not attached to your foot in the human body. It's all interconnected. So I think that being detached includes allowing yourself to feel certain levels of attachment or disappointment, or like the reverence when certain things occur or you have certain experiences, and then being able to let it go. It's not just, oh, this was a bad experience. Wait, I'm supposed to be detached. So like throwing that feeling or shutting it down and trying to discard it. Because if you're not ready to actually let something go, that should be honored first, because that allows you to then let it go.
Yes.
It's easy to say. That was easy to say, but
yeah, but not so much to do always.
It's like, you try spatchcocking a turkey the first go round. That's difficult.
Yes.
If you haven't done it before,
Oh yeah. Okay, cool. And then I think another cue was, because you do know so many different modalities and a lot of different things within the spiritual realm, what are some things that you do on a semi-regular basis to provide self-care? I mean, to get away from bubble baths, but what are some really concrete?
I do love baths.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of Pisces in my chart. So like, I'm like, but
same.
baths are great.
No, same, but something that the audience hasn't heard before.
Yeah, but beyond Calgon taking us away. I have a quote that I really love, and it's by Audre Lorde, and it's, caring for myself is not self-indulgent, not indulgent. It's an act of survival. It's an act of self-preservation, excuse me. I'm paraphrasing that. I don't have it up, but it's along those lines. And I think that understanding that self-care for me is absolutely mandatory is like an ever evolving foundation that I continue to strengthen and lay. And so that means like making sure that when I have to go to the bathroom, I go.
Yeah.
This is basic stuff, but it's really important. I know when I was working in corporate, I had a couple colleagues who would be like, I'm so busy, I haven't even gone to the bathroom. And this had been after I got attuned to Reiki and things, because around the time that I learned about Reiki, I experienced a couple really serious issues with my kidneys. And they turned out, after I got multiple ultrasounds and like I had a couple of kidney infections, it was not fun. Nobody ever wants that. I don't wish that on my soul. That was because of stress. There was absolutely nothing wrong, even though the physical symptoms I was experiencing, it's like, oh, I don't know about this. I think for me, it's like, okay, I always have to stay hydrated. And if I have to go to the bathroom, I do not care what I am doing. I'm going to honor my body. That is a very basic thing that I just have to do. And I think that for me, self-care and health, in the physical sense and also health in the mental sense, is just absolutely non-negotiable at this point in my journey. So making sure that I'm trying to eat when I'm hungry, or if I'm thirsty, those are things that I do on a daily basis. And I think that maybe people might be like, well, I do that anyway, so I roll or side eye to you. It's, if we acknowledge the ways that we are caring for ourselves already, I think that that can help lay that foundation of self-care as kind of being this thing that you're already doing. It's not necessarily something that's extra where you have to go out and get your fancy kit from Sephora with a Lush bath bomb, or go on Pinterest and follow like this crazy 25-step routine if you don't want to. If you do want to do that to develop your own like body butter with shea butter and coconut oil, which sounds really good, do that. Things like that are self-care. Cooking is self-care. Making sure that you have like just a little bit of time to breathe and relax during the day is something I also do. So I think that those are like foundational for me. I love baths. Epsom salt is great. It's really great for a couple reasons. Energetically, salt is very cleansing and purifying. It can also be very protective. So salt can help with clearing out any extra energies, or if you've had like a gunky day, just being really stressed out about who knows what, pick a wheel and spin. We're in 2020. What do you want to freak out about right now? That is completely valid. Like all of these things are valid to be concerned about, but like it can help kind of clear out those energies that are lower and aren't serving you. And so usually I recommend to my clients, especially after energy work with Reiki, to take a salt bath that can just help with clearing those energies. Epsom salt also has magnesium and sulfur in it. So magnesium sulfate is really great because when we take a bath, our skin is able to absorb those nutrients much more quickly. And with magnesium, there's a plethora of data out there about the many benefits that it has. Carolyn Dean is a naturopathic and medical doctor who has done a ton of research about the benefits of magnesium. So I think for me, those are a couple things that I integrate daily. I practice Reiki on myself every day, pretty much. I think there's a lot of things that I do in terms of thinking about self-care, right? So some days it might be going outside and walking in nature. Other days, or doing unfun stuff like sorting my socks. It's really, I think for me, across the way that I live my life, if I don't find ways of me identifying that as self-care, it's just not necessarily setting me up in a position where I'm able to thrive personally and serve other people. So, doing stuff like that is self-care. Relationships, making sure that I have a little bit of time to connect with people in a way that, it's just like in a way that can be silly sometimes. Making sure I talk to my best friend. There's a lot of different things. And with astrology, that for me also is really helpful for me understanding past situations and how to look at it in a different viewpoint, or helping kind of prepare for any great opportunities or any challenging things that might come about, which again, that led me back into having a more formal approach to my studies in astrology was a couple of years ago when I pretty much every single aspect of my life was having lots of just changes all at once. I was like, it was like kind of being in an earthquake, which, you know, that happens because sometimes things need to get shuffled around. That's what Uranus likes to do for us from a planetary standpoint. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Every once in a while I'll do, you know, I think for me, it depends on what I have available. Like right now we have a Korean spa out in the suburbs, right? That's closed down because of the coronavirus. So it's just like, okay, well, what am I able to do with my current resources? Because you don't have to like go out and buy stuff every single time you are like, I'm having a self-care day. But sometimes if you're able to do that, right, it's really great to get a massage. It's really wonderful to have a Reiki session. It's really wonderful to have those treat yourself moments, to quote Parks and Rec, right? So I try to just make sure that there's a few things every single day that I do that are just like basic habits. And then on top of that, it's like, okay, how do I make time at least for a couple hours a week to make sure that I'm having time reflecting, and I always give myself Reiki at the end of the day. Because if I don't have space for myself, there's no way I'm ever going to be able to hold space for others.
Yeah.
Like I have to get out of my way. I think also, to your point about I've studied a lot of stuff and practiced for a long period of time. For me, that's been really helpful with my clients who have had lots of different changes over this past year. Especially, I was talking to one of them last week, and they were sharing with me like, oh, you know, after the series of 8 sessions we did earlier this year, like I think that I'm handling all the other shifts that I've had in my life so much better, and I don't think that I would have been able to do that if I hadn't had the Reiki series that I did with you. It's like, I don't think I would be able to get through this pandemic as well as I have been if I hadn't done that. And I'm like, that is amazing to hear. That's amazing to hear. And I think part of it is when we're able to identify what our own stuff is and put it aside, that gives us space. Or, you know, if we don't have that much stuff, it makes it even easier because we're able to hold space for other people.
Yeah. And I think really to sum up your point, it's kind of about at least the way I look at it is taking your power back, or making sure you're kind of like standing in your power by taking care of you first, right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, then you can share with others when your cup is full. And also, I think another thing that I always like to add to the list is, for me, it would be journaling.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
That's just like, that is oh man, that's so funny. I think that journaling is I have to do that. Like you have to reflect. And there was a time a few years ago where I thought that, oh, I have to journal. And I had a reading with an energy healer who moved to California. I forgot her name, but it was really great, where she's also a speech pathologist. And she's like, and that came up in the reading where she's like, if you want to journal, just tell yourself you journal. Even if you just write one thing down on a sheet of paper, you're journaling. And it was a Mercury retrograde a couple years ago where I was reconfiguring my library, and I found all my journals and I put them in the same area, and I started laughing. Like, I keep telling myself I don't journal enough, and I literally have a stack of 25 notebooks from the past 2 years. Like, okay, so here's the proof that shows us that this belief I had may not necessarily be accurate.
Yep.
And I can change, and I can shift that perspective. Just because, and I want to say that the other side of that coin can also be with empowerment, right? The taking your power back by having a shift in perspective is really something that can be cultivated through journaling.
Yeah. I think, that's a very good point. I think when you really write down, things in terms of reflection, or I don't know, maybe think about what somebody said to you, and then you really kind of think, well, wait a minute, that doesn't even really make sense, or they don't even know the full story. I think that's a way of really kind of declaring who you are. And if there are
Yeah.
any old beliefs that you do want to change, it's right there in front of you. And you know kind of what to work on or what stepping point to step off of.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that it's also really a process. One of the top books this year is James Clear's The Atomic Habits, where habits take more than 21 days to develop, and habits, basically, you're developing them constantly. You're never not developing a habit, right? And so I think that shifting that into, okay, what is it that I need to practice? And how can I allow that to show up across the board in my life is something that I'm continuing to cultivate. So with journaling, language is really fun to play around with. Like, there's more than one way to journal. There's so much information out there. It's really overwhelming, but just sometimes putting things down on a sheet of paper can be a really great sanity check.
Yeah, I think more so than most people even think of sometimes, because it's something that's so simple in theory, yet when you're actually doing it, you're like, oh wow, I'm really like gaining quite a bit from this, or learning quite a
Yeah.
lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Just because something's simple doesn't mean it's necessarily easy,
Yes.
but
Yes.
it's, yeah. Like,
Totally.
instant coffee is not instant. It's not. It's taken thousands of years to get to that point.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
much time. Yeah.
No, that analogy makes that makes perfect sense
Yeah.
to
I
me.
guess we should share that about spiritual growth also, because that's something I run into where um, sometimes a prospective client or current client will have one Reiki session and they'll want to work on something that has been part of their experience for an extended period of time. And I think that with life and our spiritual journey, sometimes Reiki can be presented as like a cure-all, which it's great for so many different things. It is also extremely gentle, right? And so it's not going to be like instant coffee where you immediately perk up. If you're ready for a quick fix or a breakthrough or something like that, Reiki meets you where you are. And so I've had lots of clients who've had like really powerful breakthroughs even from one session, but it, again, everyone's different. So going back to the instant coffee thing, it's like, if it's taken all this time for you to build up something, it's not always going to be that you can just push a button and it's going to go away. So, you drink instant coffee, you make it saves you so much time, and it's there. Sometimes there's really good versions of instant coffee, or sometimes it doesn't taste great, but whatever. Like, the universe, usually with spiritual lessons, in my experience, for me, has kind of been like, oh, you just want to like drink some instant coffee right now and think that it's going to be fine and everything's going to be fixed. Okay, we'll get you your instant coffee. You put your order in that you want this. You ask the universe, like, hey, can I get some instant coffee? Universe, for me, a lot of times in different experiences, has been like, okay, so here's your instant coffee. You need to go to Ethiopia and partner with some coffee farmers, and you're going to apprentice with them and learn about the coffee beans and learn about the soil. And you're going to learn about how to cultivate this plant and learn how to grow it. And then you can go to the lab and learn how they actually make instant coffee. And after you've done all this stuff, and then you can go back to where you're living, then you can make yourself some instant coffee, because you know what it actually takes to actually get that and how everything is interconnected. It's like, okay, now that I've done all this work, now I can get my reward.
Yeah, and you're going to get so much more value out of it because you have the understanding, and you're like, wow, I really, I'm thankful for the people who took the time out of their day to even invent something like this, if you will. So yeah, and it makes you more knowledgeable, and then you can kind of like train people on it and really explain and know the difference between the good and the bad. And I think a lot of
Yeah.
people, they don't always like look at the whole picture, and then they don't even realize what bit of it is missing to really appreciate it to the fullest extent.
Yeah, I think that when you're in these moments at the time, it can be difficult to see that. there's a phrase, what is Les Brown, who's great. He's a great motivational speaker. I highly recommend him. If anybody needs a pep talk, just search for his name. He's amazing. He was saying it's difficult to see the picture when you're in the frame. And I think that that is so apt, because it's like when you're going through something, even if there might be points of being like, okay, I know this is temporary, or let me savor this, or it's difficult to have that perspective, and you're not going to know what the outcome is yet.
Mm-hmm.
We don't always know, or if you haven't seen the outcome yet, that doesn't mean it's not coming.
Yes. And I think a lot of people struggle with that because, you know, you kind of want to see the end result, but you know, if you really have trust in the universe, then it doesn't really matter at the end of the day.
Yes, I have a fun story about this actually. So do you do anything with law of attraction? Or...
Oh girl, yes.
Okay, so there's this book by Pam Kraut, I believe her name is pronounced that way. It's E Squared. Yes, this is the book that I did it from. She has a couple books where I wanted a tablet. So I just did the experiment to manifest the tablet. I put my order into the universe. And then later on that year, I wound up getting a tablet. But the way that I thought I was going to get it was completely different from the way I did. Like another quick story that I have that I think is even more hilarious is I hadn't ridden a motorcycle, and I realized, like, I really want to ride a motorcycle. Okay, universe, I want to be able to ride a motorcycle and have fun doing it, and it'll be safe. So I was in Puerto Rico a couple years back in San Juan. I was actually in Old San Juan, and I had finished up a tour. I was meeting up with a friend and one of their parents after they had gone to a wedding, because I was there, like she made a whole vacation out of it. And so we were trying to reconnect. I ordered an Uber, and it was the Uber person called, and it was a long delay, and they're like, I'm really sorry, I had to cancel. Same thing happened the second time. And so I went to the hotel where I had done a walking tour and asked them if they could call me a cab, and they were like, you know what, we can't call you a taxi because there is actually a strike going on with all the taxi drivers, and they formed a barricade around Old San Juan so no one can come in or come out. I was like, oh, okay, new information. Talked to my friend, told her about it, wound up that our host for the Airbnb came and picked me up on a motorcycle. And that's how I got back to the Airbnb, and that's how I wound up riding a motorcycle. So I think that it's like, oh, this is not at all what I would have expected, but this was like, it was a really memorable story. It's a really memorable story and time. And I was like, okay, well, you know what? I'm in a beautiful, like, this is, I was like, oh, cool. This is like icing on a cake. This is like, I could deal with this. And when I was waiting for this, this was another funny time where, like, sometimes the universe has jokes too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not all cut and dry or super serious. You can have a sense of play. And when I say the universe, I mean the actual universe. But, you know, other people have different perspectives, and if they want to think about it from a, like, source or spirit or God or what have you, that is, of course, you're absolutely right, and you are invited to kind of switch that out in the metaphor. But the universe is jokes. So I'm waiting for this motorcycle, and this was over the course of like 4 hours or something like that. So this was not a short period of time.
Yeah.
I'm waiting in this little plaza from the time that I ordered the Uber to, like, everything, because there was so much traffic. So I'm just like, oh, I wish it would come. And then I see this cat. So there's a lot of cats in Old San Juan, and it's just sleeping up on some stairs by this hotel. And I was just like, do you see that cat? See how relaxed that cat is? This is why you went on this trip. And I was like, oh. And I literally wanted this time to relax. I'm like, oh, this is how I get this time. Okay. And then I got to ride a motorcycle. So
yeah.
I was like, oh, okay. I see what we did there. I did ask for this. Okay.
Yes. No, I love it. I love how, you know, the unexpected events are always the most memorable, you know, because you wouldn't expect it to happen that way, like you said. And yeah, kind of, you know, going back to the law of attraction guru, Abraham Hicks, when she says, you know, things are always working out for me, those delays and everything were a way of things really working out.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I mean, it is very much your vibration, your resonance. And I think that is very simple. But when we're talking about vibration, there's also so many things that can throw our vibration off.
Yes.
And I'm not just talking about, you know, bitch, don't kill my vibe, or like quote, toxic people. Like, I'm sure there are people out there who have found me toxic, and, you know, everyone has their own experiences, right? But like, if you think about, like, we're on computers, there's EMF tech radiation from all of our devices. And even if you don't necessarily use a lot of devices, geographic location, the food you eat, all those different things have vibrations in terms of them. So like, if you eat food that is processed in a factory that treats their workers really well, and they treat their animals really well, that's going to show up in the food.
Oh yeah,
because you
big
can
time.
tell when something's cooked with love, and you can tell when something is just like not. It's like, what, you know, have you seen like Water for Chocolate?
No.
Okay, so it was originally a book. There's also made into a movie. And so the daughter, in the main character in the novel, she's the youngest daughter, and she cooks all the meals, and her emotions also get channeled into the meals. And so like, there was one scene where she was extremely sad, and everyone's eating her food because she was a really talented cook, and they start sobbing. Like a table of like 20 people, right? And so I think that while that doesn't happen in such a like literal sense all the time, if you think about it, it's like, it can be really easy to get our vibration thrown off.
Oh yeah.
So much, you know, even if you're just like telling yourself, okay, everything's always working out for me. Sometimes that takes practice to hone, to make that groove in your brain, so that way you can resonate with that belief. So that way, you know, like attracts like.
Yes.
Opposites do attract too, right? But there's more than one there's more than one law in the universe. And it's really interesting, because if you're listening to really sad music, maybe you're in a sad mood, and that really just helps you feel a wash of empathy and a release and let it go. Or you might, what is that? There's a Sarah McLachlan commercial on television with the animals.
Yes.
And, you know, I don't usually watch that anymore, because it just really breaks my heart. So, I mean, that takes time, and it takes resilience and resoluteness and practice. You're not going to, like, you can't be made out of steel. And I don't think it's necessary to be made out of steel either, when we think about how to maintain your being steadfast. I think it's more difficult now than it has been, because of the volume of information and the ways in which we can get just encouraged to take different approaches or view things from a different standpoint, because of the plethora of information we're getting.
Exactly. That's well put. Okay, great. So yeah, I know we could talk for hours like we usually do. That's nothing new for us. But yeah, definitely want to thank you for coming on, and go ahead, you know, plug your social media where everyone can find you.
Yeah, so I do have some openings for clients right now. Reiki sessions, usually I do for like an hour or so, and they're all long distance, because Reiki works that same way. If anyone's curious about Reiki, or learning more about the Akashic Records, or astrology, they can find me at A Glorious Kaleidoscope.com. My web page is coming really soon. And also on Instagram, I'm at A_glorious_kaleidoscope. So this was really fun. I hope that everyone just has a better sense of, like, self-care includes things you already do.
Yes, exactly.
And, you know, thanks for having me. This was really fun, talking about just the way that things can shift with people.
Yes, yes, it's so important. And yeah, no, definitely. I feel like every time I talk to you, I learn so much. So it was definitely
thank you.
Yes, definitely a treat to have you on. Okay, great. And as always, you guys can follow me on social media at Instagram, The New Age Goddess. So _new_age goddess, Facebook, New Age Goddess. My website is thenewagegoddess.com, where you can book a Reiki or Akashic Records session with me. And then my YouTube channel is Confessions of a New Age Goddess, where I upload all of my podcast episodes if you do prefer YouTube over podcasts. And yes, feel free to rate and subscribe. And I will see you all next time. Much love and namaste.